Is Pokemon unstoppable? Let's talk about that today. Hey guys and girls, Poketin King here, back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about all things Pokemon. Is Pokemon the brand unstoppable? Will it ever not be the number one TCG? You know, it's a massive brand. We're talking about the video games, the animated series and movies. Obviously, it's also got manga, comic books, magazines, plush toys, toys itself, as well as the card game. There's a lot to Pokemon than just the card game. And can it ever really be knocked off? So one of the fundamental reasons why Pokemon really works so well is nostalgia. A question that can be asked really is, what's the price of nostalgia? Apparently it's $4.99 a pack, or whatever a plush toy costs. Because the way things have gone really with Pokemon is a lot of the time over past generations there have been people that weren't happy with certain games, certain series that came out. I heard it every generation. So, when, the Emerald, Ruby, Sapphire came out for Hoenn, people weren't happy. When you had the Diamond and Pearl games, people didn't like Sinnoh. Then, the Black and White games came out, people didn't like those. X, Y, Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, Scarlet, Violet. There's always people that are like, do you know what? I just don't get these Pokemon. I don't like it. And that's fine. Not everyone's going to like each game. I have played all of the Pokemon games. I haven't completed a Pokemon series game since, I think XY were the last main series games I ever completed. I've since gone back and completed the older games like multiple times, but Sun and Moon was when I started to lose a little bit of interest in the games. And then Sword and Shield was good, and Scarlet Violet, they're good games, like, don't get me wrong. But I prefer the old school style, the chibi characters that we had, as well as just the layout of the games. Obviously, I think open world is amazing. I still think the graphics are a little bit behind what they could be doing, honestly. I feel like they're not really fully utilising, the power of the Switch. But I feel like they could do a lot more with the main series games. Personally, I think the open world stuff should be reserved for games like Stadium or, a separate series. I think the main games. But at the same time, that's my opinion. You had a lot of people saying, oh, Pokemon never changes the game. And they did change it and people weren't happy. So you can't please everyone. But the video game sales, I'll put a picture up here of the last two generations. Sales for Sword and Shield and Scarlet Violet have beat sales for any other Pokemon video game, bar the original Red, Blue, and Yellow. And they're only slightly below. So sales of Pokemon games are starting to pick up again. Clearly the game series is getting a lot of traction. It could be for the last couple of years because of the the pandemic. A lot of people got back into Pokemon. Pokemon Go is huge for Pokemon as well. That's this whole separate entity that's worth almost $1 billion in itself, which is ridiculous. But microtransactions and all that stuff. But Pokemon Go, obviously, is its own separate thing. But nostalgia is the key thing here, right? So, when the first Pokemon games came out, obviously, if you were a kid or, early teens, you would have seen Pokemon. You probably would have got into it either watching the series or the video games or the cards. And then obviously the second generation of stuff came out and some people would have left. They might have hit their teens and gone, oh, I'm too cool for Pokemon now. Like a lot of people did. A lot of my friends grew out of it. But you have new people coming in, it's always a constant stream. And then you had, the third generation. And again, I think that was the generation where a lot of people dropped off because they were in their teenage years then. And I don't feel like enough people got back into it. There wasn't like a new resurgence, right, of people coming into it. It was probably steady, but not enough maybe. And that's why we saw, the sales of the games weren't amazing at the time. The card game as well, obviously, at the time, it changed from Wizards of the Coast printing the cards to Pokemon Company themselves doing it. And we know that those EX era sets were very low printed because the demand was extremely low. Probably the least printed sets ever made, some of those sets, honestly. And that's trying to find boxes of those sets are near impossible. And I felt like a lot of the EX stuff was undervalued. And there are certain things still, really, I think, that are undervalued in EX era. But there wasn't enough people that have that emotional connection to them to collect. Um, and that's why I think a lot of it is still, quite affordable. And then obviously we move into, Black and White, Diamond and Pearl Weaver. And Diamond and Pearl, I mean, Platinum was a fantastic game. One of the best games made, honestly. It is up there with, like, Emerald and Crystal and stuff, and obviously the originals. But, again, you had this drop-off. I remember Pearl came out, and I think I was year 7 or 8 in secondary school or high school in America. So it's my first or second year of, high secondary school. And I remember being really excited about it coming out. And I remember saying it to people at school, and they were like, okay, cool. And I think that was like really hit me. I thought, okay, maybe a lot of people growing out of this. And it wasn't that popular then. And obviously we moved on to Black and White again. People didn't really like the Black and White games. I thought Black and White 2 was really good, really strong games. And then obviously moving to XY, and then obviously, continuing that. And the thing that Pokemon does so well is every generation will bring some people in. And then, now we've got people being nostalgic about XY era or Black and White era or Diamond and Pearl era. And those same people will have more people that are going to be nostalgic about the Sun and Moon era and the Sword and Shield era. And that's a separate nostalgia for living in the moment in terms of like the brand itself, as opposed to like the card game. So the nostalgia is what pushes it on. And people have kids, right? So, these people that grew up playing the first couple of games, they've got kids now. They want to get their kids involved back into Pokemon. And you have a constant stream and supply of fans. And that's why Pokemon is the biggest brand, because it continually does that. There's always something that it does well. And they go, right, okay, well, we're going to do Alolan versions of Pokemon or Hisuian Pokes, They do different versions of these different, of the legendary birds, of, Growlithe, of all these classic Pokemon. And then these new fans can have a similar nostalgia for Pokemon that were brought out before they were even born. And they're going to have nostalgia for the Galarian legendary birds rather than the original legendary birds, for instance. And that's really what they do so well, is they've tapped into it, and that is their selling point, right? And that is what makes the money. And then you look at card games, right? People are, nostalgic about different generations. People are nostalgic about XY because they got back into Pokemon then because of the Pokemon Go and the 20th anniversary evolutions, reprint. But then people are also going to be nostalgic about Sword and Shield era because, the pandemic happened, people were stuck indoors, people were getting back into Pokemon, people were getting into Pokemon for the first time, they were cracking packs because everyone was doing it, Logan Paul and, all these content creators were huge at the time, and it was growing, and you've got that excitement, and it brings back those good memories. So when people think of it, they think fondly of, those times that I was sat there, and that's the key, right? It's the memories, because everything that we have, everything that we own, whether it's the video games, the card games, whatever it is, we can't take that with us when we go, but the memories that we have and the legacy that we leave on, and those memories that we shared with people. And that's why a lot of these events, we've got like card shows, card parties, expos, the numbers every year are getting bigger and bigger because people want to share a hobby, something that they're passionate about with other people. And then it then creates memories. And it's just a constant stream. And Pokemon really have done it. And other games, you look at Yu-Gi-Oh! They try to do the same. Magic, they do the same. They reprint cards, but what they don't have is that same feeling towards, okay, iconic cards like Black Lotus or Blue Eyes White Dragon or Dark Magician. But how many Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters have a nostalgic feeling to them? Not that many. Okay, you might go, I remember playing this card, but the feelings you have for Blue Eyes White Dragon isn't the same you have for Man-Eater Bug. There's not people out there, very few. There's probably somebody watching this that's going to go, hang on a minute, I've got 9,000 copies of Man-Eater Bug. And hats off to you, fair play. But there aren't a lot of people, whereas I just look at the stuff that I share on Instagram. I've got reels on there that get millions of views now, and it's talking about Pokemon, and the comments that I get are people all listing their favourite Pokemon. And every single person commenting is unique because some people might go, I'm a really big fan of Hitmontop, or I'm a really big fan of Burmy, And you're thinking, Burmy, why? How is someone a big fan of Burmy? Then you got like Zigzagoon, and it's like, okay, cool, I understand that. And then someone's favorite Pokemon is Trubbish, which I think, okay, cool. And that's the great thing about it, right? So every time a card comes out in a new set, people are like, right, I'm gonna open packs because I want to get that card. I want to pull that Trubbish, or I want to pull that Ponyta, or whatever Pokemon, a Weedle, because it is endless, right? And they're constantly making new Pokemon. And for me, I feel like sometimes I could be wrapped in my own bubble of, I really like the early stuff, and I do like Pokemon from every generation. But then you see people and speak to people, and their favorite Pokemon is something you didn't even think somebody could like. You see videos of people going, if you could delete one Pokemon, what would it be? And the Pokemon that they're saying delete, there's 10 people in the comments going, that's my favorite Pokemon. And that's the beauty of it. And no other brand, no other media franchise like this has been able to match Pokemon and go toe to toe with them with that. Because, that's the nostalgia, right? A lot of people that got into Magic early on were adults, were teenagers, were adults, It was more for those. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a bit of a mix right there. Obviously, it was a bit different, but again, it's not the same. And I think when people talk about like Flesh and Blood, for instance, they compare it to Magic, and they go, "Oh, but people want to be nostalgic about the first three sets." Yes, they will, but how many people? Because nostalgia of a memory when you're an adult versus a nostalgia of memory when you're a kid are very different things. They are very different things. I have fond memories of 5-10 years ago, but they're not the same as the memories that I have 15-20 years ago, right? And you can't emulate, you can't fake that. It is organic, and it is time, and it takes time to build that. And most of these brands come and go before they've even had the opportunity to do so. So this is why really Pokemon will always be number one. I don't see it dropping off. All the time I always hear, oh, but what if Pokemon dies? Or yeah, but what if Pokemon stops making Pokemon? Or what if this? Do you really think an industry worth $100 billion is going to go, no, we're not going to make any more games anymore. We're not going to do any more No, because it's bigger every single year. The card game industry alone is worth around $20 billion. There's money involved in it. Collectibles is huge, and Pokemon have an army. That they have an army, right? Whether it's the plush toys, the Pokemon centers across the world, the pop-ups we have, the events we have, they always do so well. Pokemon is huge, and it is potentially bigger than what some people can fathom at a time. I think if you're involved in other card games and you don't collect Pokemon, you've most likely got at least one memory of Pokemon, whether it's the video games, the TV series, the cards. Maybe your friend had the cards. I would struggle to find very many people in the world under 30 that haven't had any exposure to Pokemon. But how many of those people have had exposure to Magic the Gathering? How many of those people have exposure to Yu-Gi-Oh? And that's why I think games like Lorcana will do so well, because Disney is so huge. One Piece are doing so well because One Piece is huge. And that's the thing. But you've got to have every single thing doing well, because you've seen it before in the past. If Pokemon drops off the card game, for instance, okay, the others will do well, but you will get a little bit of a drop off, right? Because there are some people that only play Pokemon Go. They don't do anything else Pokemon. You've got people that only collect the card game. They don't play the games or watch the series, and vice versa. And their exposure to Pokemon is slightly different. Everyone has a little different story, and that's the beauty of it, right? And that's why it's so special when you meet people and you talk about Pokemon. And it means a lot to people, right? It means a great deal to people. I'm sitting here right now talking about it, making a video, and I'm sure there's people that are sitting here watching this and going, yeah, and you're thinking back maybe of memories, and that's the beauty of it. And Pokemon is, I did a post up recently in a Facebook group, and someone said, I feel like it's a bit stupid to say Pokemon won, but I'm right. I think it was a little bit silly to say that, because that would suggest that there was ever a competition. And we can talk about short-term competition, but in the long term, it was only ever Pokemon. And when you talk about like top 5 TCGs, right, I think Pokemon is in its own realm. and then it's the rest of them, right? You look at sales in Japan for the last 12 months, Pokemon outsold the next 8 card games put together. That's huge. People say Magic's big. People say Yu-Gi-Oh's big. But Duel Masters did better than both of those in Japan. Duel Masters is huge, but Duel Masters died over here, right? So yeah, let me know your thoughts below. What are your fond memories of Pokemon? Whether it's the video games, the card games, Pokemon Go, maybe the anime series, or anything. It could be anything, honestly. I really like to hear your thoughts and share those memories with you. And as always, hit those links in the description below. Hit the like button and check out the Discord. And have a great day.